Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
I have found that in times of separation and loss and sorrow, the songs can bring much comfort and solace. In this spirit, I now recite from the 23rd Psalm, this great psalm of faith. And Don was a man of faith. And these verses remind us that even when we feel alone or lonely, we are never truly alone, for God is with us, and we know that God is with Don. You may join me in these verses. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I continue now with a modern day poem, which we read especially around the High Holy Days, and I think Don was familiar with it. I think he liked it, because if he didn't, he would have told me. But I would like to personalize this for Don. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we will remember Don. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember Papa. At the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember Don. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, when we have achievements that are based on his, we will remember him. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. We will remember Don, Papa. He was memorable, unique, one of a kind, always happy, always smiling, and very funny. In 2002, 20 years ago, Don wrote his memoir, and he wrote a part entitled, you may be hearing other parts of that memoir, but the part I want to read to you is the part that's entitled, What to Do With Me. Regarding the eulogy, family members who want to speak can do so. and talk for as long as they wish. If the family member is fearful of being overcome by emotion, he or she can author something and designate someone else to read it. Different rules for the rabbi. No matter what he says, he is limited to 10 minutes total. He can say, I love my family, I loved having a family, I had a wonderful life, and I had enough smarts to know it. He can quote me if he wants, but as far as anything personal, that's it. I don't want some stranger who likely didn't even know me standing up in front of my family talking about my life. What did he know about my life? I do want the rabbi to say the usual stuff about everyone's journey through life and about our inevitable death, and he certainly should say the blessings appropriate to my Jewish faith. I think I'm going to exceed 10 minutes, though. Well, this rabbi knew and appreciated Don. And we share a fantastic time along with Judy in Israel. That was his first trip to Israel. And I know how much he loved the experience, as he loved life and living, family, and fun. So I have a memory to share with you. We were kayaking on the Jordan River. Those of you who have been to Israel know the Jordan River isn't that much of a river. At times, really not that much. But we were kayaking on it. And we came upon a group of college-age women, part of a birthright group, who got stuck in the mud. And Don was so kind, I think he got out of the kayak and he tried to liberate them. So in Judy's words, he was a terrible flirt, right? Then his kayak got stuck in the mud. But if truth be known, Don was always ready to help, to offer assistance, to give guidance, to show care and concern, and he would do anything for anyone. Don was also very handy. He could fix anything, he could build anything, he loved having a project, and he was Jewish. Indeed, the greatest joy in life is to be able to say, I still have something to do. I want to accomplish yet more. And so he did. And therefore, I believe that Don might say to all of us now, thank you so much for being here. He'd be overwhelmed by the outpouring of support for his family. And then he might go on to say, don't mourn for me, for I did not lead a mournful life. And you know, in the balance, he certainly did not. He led a full, fulfilling, vital, purposeful, and good life. In fact, he would say, and he said quite often, I am so blessed. We realize how much Don taught us in terms of his giving and his caring and his loving. Don attended Central High School. He went on to receive a graduate degree in mechanical engineering from Drexel University. Don was drawn to sales, and he built his own advertising company. He was so well suited for sales, being such a people person, and his clients became friends, good friends. He was so respected in the business and in his industry, and he was known as a peacemaker. Don had many other interests and passions, which included boating, water skiing, snow skiing, scuba diving, even parachuting and bungee jumping, but only one time each. He was not into team sports, but enjoyed running and the balance boards. Most importantly, Don really loved kids, was involved with the special needs program at the JCC. In fact, he brought the concept of a Special Olympics to the JCC leadership. As you can see, Don led a good life. He led a great life. However, one cannot speak of Don alone without also speaking of you, Judy. You first met 67 years ago. You were just 15. Don was 17. And at the time, you were a counselor at a day camp, and a neighbor introduced you to one another or fixed you up. And even though you were both dating somebody else at the time, you were meant to be together. And over your 63 years of marriage, you evolved into a real team, a true partnership. Best friends, soulmates. You were there for one another in the good times, and so many good times, but also in the challenging times, and there were some of those as well. I can't even begin to imagine how much you will miss your life's partner. And how Don loved you, his dear family. He valued the importance of family love, devotion, and companionship. It was especially important to him that you all remain close, and you are all close. Dave and Linda, Debbie, and grandchildren, Marissa and John, Jordan and Zachary. I know that your Pop-Pop adored you. And he was able to attend your wedding just prior to becoming ill. Your dad, your Pop-Pop, he was so proud of all of you, proud of your accomplishments, and prouder yet of the bright, sensitive, and caring family that you are. He felt your constant support, care, concern, and love. Don is also survived by and will be profoundly missed by a sister, Lois. All of you here, well, there are people virtually here too, will carry with you always so many warm, rich, and good memories of this kind man. That's a word that's been used so often recently, just a kind man, who lived his life in his own way, but always with humor. As many of us are aware, the high holy days are about to be here. We're in the month of Elul. Actually, from the first day of Elul to Yom Kippur, it's exactly 40 days, always is. Which reminds us of the 40, of the journey, of the wandering in the wilderness. At the conclusion of that wandering, Moses is very disappointed. More than that, he believes it's unfair that he's not able to enter the promised land. You remember that part? And there are a lot of reasons given, but in any case, there's a consolation, call it a gift. God says, okay, you cannot go in, but you can go to the top of Nebo, Mount Nebo, and you can look westward, and you can see the promised land from a distance, which at first glance may seem like, what kind of consolation is that? But it is. None of us can do it all. But if you can look into the future and see that there are generations after you, and that you were part of that, you helped create that, you helped shape that, then that's the greatest gift of all. Don died after a struggle of at least a year, I would say. At age 85, he died knowing that he helped to raise, guide, teach, and inspire, along with Judy, children and grandchildren who in turn have so much to offer to others. You are his and their precious legacy. He loved. He was certainly loved in turn. We know that this love has not ended now with his passing. For as long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. And to keep those memories going, I am going to call on Debbie and then Dave, where they might come up together.
Hello. Thank you all for coming to honor Dad. My family and I so appreciate your support during this difficult time. 24 years ago, my uncle passed away. My cousin Joel gave a beautiful, inspiring eulogy. And afterward, when we were all together, I said, I want to do that when my mom and dad pass. And without missing a beat, Joel said, Deb, you can't do that. You're the family crier. So we'll see how far I get today. Poor David's up here in the background. Dad was the warmest, kindest person I've ever known. Always a smile, always happy. He taught us what his father taught him. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. He and Mom created a wonderful, happy, playful home to grow up in. Where was I? Over the last few weeks, family and friends have shared wonderful stories with me, showing me another layer of Dad's benevolence. 2 people told me how he saved them from unfortunate situations, opening up our family home to them in their time of need. Another was about how he gave them a job, trained them to do more and more, creating an environment in which they thrived. Dad was a smart businessman. After years as an engineer, he lost his job in 1975. One Sunday before our weekly drive to see the grandparents, Mom and Dad said, now don't tell Grandma and Grandpa that Daddy doesn't have a job. With a family to feed, he started an advertising agency for engineering firms. Working hard and smart, Don Kaplan Associates was well on its way within a year. Of course, it was having Dave and I stuff envelopes for client mailings that really made a difference. Tony. Truthfully, I learned a lot about business from Dad. Hard work, persistence, aim high, and just keep going. You can achieve anything you set your minds to. Thanks, Dad. Here's the first cry. Besides Mom, Dad's greatest love was kids. He loved making and doing things for kids. As a boy, Dad fell in love with woodworking. He made David and I a ping pong table with about a 6-inch cavity underneath the removable tabletop. Inside that cavity, Dad and Dave set up an electric train set that snaked around a miniature town. Sandpaper roads for our Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels to drive on, miniature trees on moss lawns, along with tiny people and model houses gave us hours of enjoyment. Years later, he built a miniature one for grandson Jordan. Dad's pride and joy. That is until Marissa was born. And then Jordan. And then Zach. He loves you kids to pieces. We took a back seat when you guys were born. Where was I would teasingly, he loved just being in your presence, playing games with you, talking with you about your interests. I would teasingly ask Dad, would you rather be a daddy or a papa? Sometimes he would answer yes, meaning both equally. Other times he'd say papa. After retiring, Dad got involved with Special Olympics. First with Bancroft School's track team and later the JCC. Dad proposed the creation of a JCC Special Olympics track team to the special needs director, and with hard work they made it happen. Dad led 15 athletes and several volunteer coaches to the South Jersey Special Olympics. He wrote of the experience, I may have found out why I do it. As I got to know the kids, I fell in love, and when I fell in love, I would no longer see their limitations. They all became very special to me. Dad loved outdoors and adventures. In 1969, he bought a 13-foot boat that needed work, and off the four of us went. 6 other boats over the next 44 years. Every summer, Mom and Dad hosted family and friends on the Delaware River, around Cooper's Creek, and the shore. KFC chicken, fruit, cookies, and Coke were the staples in between swimming in a cove and water skiing. And I must add, my mom became a really good boat driver for Dad and Dave when they were water skiing. Good job, Judy. I'm told Dad had a midlife crisis at the age of 30. The first was snow skiing in Vail during a business trip to Denver. We know how that worked out, what with family trips out west and the annual Gentlemen's Ski Club trip and no Winers Ski Club trips. But no, he didn't stop there. He needed more for us. So he took up scuba diving, he did a tandem parachute jump, and he went bungee jumping. He set up the videotape for Mom and I and said, just press play. Mom and I were not thrilled, and we told him so. So the camera points to his viewpoint, crashing to the earth. We didn't think it was funny, but he didn't care. All right, David, here it comes. Being Daddy's girl is something amazing if I get through this. Being Daddy's girl is really something special. I had him wrapped the day I was born. As a little girl, I held his pinky as he ran errands at Two Guys and the local hardware store. As an adult, I held his pinky, and we both smiled. Naturally, he was a pushover for me. I'd ask, Daddy, can I? And he'd say yes, whatever it was. Though I do recall, two things that made me wonder if I was really his favorite daughter. The first was in the mid-70s, and vanilla pudding was a staple, a dessert staple in our house. I was sitting right next to Dad with an E, and he stole my pudding. I cried. Can you believe it? The second was when I was learning to snow ski, and he pushed me down. I was shocked. My father pushed me down. We're both Aquarians, the water sign, and we share the love of water and nature. Many Sundays we took boat rides on the Delaware, enjoying the sound of the motor and the water, talking about nothing or business or life. We were fortunate enough to have several father-daughter ski trips. The first was to Vail, winter of my freshman year in college. Dad wanted me to stay in Vail, not go to college. Why? So he would have an excuse to come out and ski. Words cannot express how much I loved and adored my dad. He was the best, so warm, so caring. The bond we shared was something else. I can't believe he's gone. I want my father back. Daddy, I love you forever.
Good afternoon. I'm David. I'm going to take some creative liberties here because Rabbi David, I think you went over your 10 a lot. More importantly, a couple months ago, we were fortunate to have my daughter and John get married. And I got chastised because my ceremonial speech was about 8.5 minutes according to because it was timed. And I was, how much? 9, thank you. And I did it with no notes, but A, I have notes. B, I know how long I was going to take because I have to take some ad-libbing here. So for those who are attending here today, thanks for coming. For those who are watching via streaming, thank you very much for attending to pay respects to my father and honor his life. My dad was a loving husband, father, grandfather, and the words of so many here, one of the kindest people they've ever met. Bear with me for some context here, because I got to do a little background setup here. So you heard Rabbi David talk about graduated Central, graduated Drexel, things like that. Dabby did a good job on his business career, but I want to put this together here. The condensed version of his business career can be summed up. He was an engineer in the electronics, telecommunications field. Then he moved into technical sales, then to sales and operational management, and he worked with several firms in the PA and South Jersey area. He had an entrepreneurial edge. As those of you know, he started DKA, Don Kaplan Associates, an advertising, marketing, consulting firm. Calling on many of his former colleagues, pleasure to see so many people here today. Thank you so much. And many of you moved into your own businesses, starting your own businesses, and needless to say, thank you for supporting him over the years. The 2 key gifts you heard about people talk about today were his ability to communicate verbally, and most significantly, the man could write. Not only could write, but you heard Rabbi Debbie talk about this. 20 years ago, he wrote a journal called My Wonderful Life. So with his blessing, I'm going to read excerpts from this, if you don't mind. When I read this journey, he was already retired by 2020 when he wrote this. No, 2002 he wrote this. He was probably bored and needed another project, so he said, I'm going to write a journal. And I'm going to share whys. The why is easy. The why is easy, and you heard it today. He always saw himself as a happy man. Bear with me here. So I have to go find the key excerpts here. Years ago, I was told, you're as happy as you decide to be. That was great advice. I decided to be happy. Life is so much to offer. If you're here today, if you worked with my dad, if you went on boats with my dad, ski with dad, he was always doing something to make him happy. Having said that, bear with me here as I go to the right page. It's one thing to say you want to be happy, it's another to do it. His inspiration came from his father, my grandfather, and my kid's great-grandfather. He's talking about his dad. Dad had enormous impact on our lives. And when he's talking about our lives, Aunt Lois, he's talking about you. You're mentioned in here a lot. Lois and I still refer to ourselves as John Kaplan's kids. He was an extraordinary man. He was a loving husband and the best father in the world. He was and continues to be our role model. First on my list was his integrity. He set the standard for honesty. Over the years, I learned integrity starts with being honest with yourself. What am I good at? What am I not so good at? Who am I kidding? I can't tell you how beneficial that has been. Let me just pause there. When I consider the people I associate with, and I assume a lot of the friends in this room today, you probably relate to what he's talking about here, and you probably see a lot of that in yourselves there, because he wouldn't be friends with people who didn't aspire to those attributes. This is in the words of my grandfather. My grandfather came here from Russia. He rose the ranks of Pennsylvania Electric Company as a manager. He was very attuned to discrimination, not just Jewish discrimination, but all kinds of discrimination in the workplace. And this is what my dad's talking about here. He talked about discrimination, referring to people who blame their failures on the fact that they're being discriminated against. They claim they're not getting anywhere because they are victims of discrimination. Dad said BS. If that's really true, you're in an environment and it's own fault if you don't get out. My grandfather didn't really say BS. In fact, what my dad says, I never heard him curse until I was an adult. And here's my dad talking. My kids never heard me curse either. Well, as a father, that's a big fail on my part. Sorry about that, kids, because I think you've heard me curse once upon or twice, so that's a little bit of a fail on my part. So, this was interesting. When we pulled this out the other day, I had not read this in 20 years and stuff like that, so it was really interesting to relate back to how he viewed it and think about my grandpa, who passed away a long time ago. One of the things that made him happy is, I'm off. 67 years ago, he met my mom, Judy. His loving wife, his business colleague, his great friend, his friend of many here today, and a fabulous grandma. I can go on and on, many attributes described by Mom, but from my dad's point of view, he'd want you to know there's two things you need to know about my mom. They were newly married at the time. Mom dropped out of Temple 2 months before she was graduating to be with him at the ROTC in Virginia. She didn't tell him she was dropping out. She just showed up and she had already dropped out. So that's a woman with chutzpah. The other thing you need to know about my mom is their first car was a 1951 Plymouth with a manual transmission, and she could drive a manual transmission. Apparently, the local teenagers thought you were pretty cool, Mom. She and my dad had the spirit to take on and embrace new and varied challenges and experiences. As you heard from a lot of people, my dad had many, many, many hobbies. I'm not going to elaborate on many of them. He and my mom owned a lot of boats over the years. But it's interesting to read the boat stories from his perspective. This is boat number one. Boat number one, it was a small boat, as Debbie talked about. They were out boating one time with some friends, and they said, "Man, that was a blast." They came back, and apparently my dad expressed to some people that, "Hey, that was really fun having a boat." Apparently, a couple friends of them heard me raving about what fun I had had because they called one day to tell me they knew of a boat for sale. I had not even considered owning a boat. That was the beginning. I bought this 13-foot no-name runabout with a trailer and a 75 horsepower outboard motor that didn't run. So I'll get to that. This is classic Dad. I spent the winter rebuilding. It was then I decided that any man who really wanted to work could get a job, even if it was driving a cab or cutting lawns. If need be, I could fix outboard motors. Can you really see him doing that for those who really know him? Something? He probably could have done that and made a career doing that. So he probably could have done that. He said that. The other thing he talked about here is they joined a swim club, and this is interesting. A lot of people looked at him and says, "You want a boat?" For those who are Jewish, you get that expression here. Jews just don't know, just like they don't watch ski, and they certainly don't snow ski. David and I would drive to the public ramp in Philadelphia at Linden Avenue on Saturday mornings and launch the boat. Then, in order to get it up in a plane, Dave would have to lie up on the back. Now, this isn't a day. This was a boat that did not have a windshield, so I can picture me up like this, because I had to get the bow down to get some speed going and stuff like that. So, if you want to know where I got to, no fear of challenges and stuff like that, that's where it came from. That was boat number one. Okay. Bear with me. So, what we learned early on is we were not big fans of fishing. We tried fishing once or twice, didn't like it. What do you do with some boats when you don't fish? You learn how to water ski. That's what you learn to do. So this is in the early days of their wooding skiing adventures, and Tony, you probably hear. We were young and strong, and the rule was when one skier stopped, the next one would have to be in the water, putting on the skis, while the first one was still climbing back into the boat. The real DNA of this is a bunch of engineers skiing together, so they're probably maxing out how much time we had to spend in the water skiing and stuff like that. Let me see here. So Deb talked about this. This water skiing period transitioned into the ski boat period. This was boats 2, 3, and 4. The common denominator, they were fast, and faster, every single one. It went from inboard outboards to totally inboard boats. The family day became hanging on the road coaches with friends or business colleagues with boats. The typical day was Dad would ski first, I would go, Dad, you were kind of 50-50, you give it a shot. I'd go again, everybody would look at me being bored because I'd be going up and down the Rancocas a couple of times. And his dad called, Mom was the designated driver. So Mom could do no wrong, Mom could pick up any challenge in the world. Not only could Mom pull a skier, back in those days we trailered boats, and Mom could drive the boat and back it up, down the ramp, and launch it. So often he and his friends, as his career was going, often he and his friends, they would not go to the bar after work. They had to be at Dredge Harbor by 6 p.m., on the Rancocas by 6:15, water skiing. often I was invited, and by then I could slalom, so I could hang with the big boys. And what I learned is it wasn't so much the slaloming, it was the wake jumping. So back then you had to figure out, can I go fast enough to jump the wake and clear the wake? But the wake jumping wasn't the key, it was like, who had the best fall? Because inevitably you didn't make the wake and you would fall. Tony, you were a dear friend. You were his water skiing buddy, his snow skiing buddy, his scuba buddy. He loved you very much. He's going to miss you. All right. After that holiday, what do you do next? At age 35, he was traveling in business in Denver when he recalled a business colleague suggesting, hey, why don't you try snow skiing? It's an activity you can do for life. So here he was in Denver. He got done his first appointment pretty early at 8 a.m., maybe noon, and his client said, hey, go have fun the rest of the day. Here's my dad. So I took off in my rented car and headed west. My first experience with the wonderfully crunchy Rocky Mountain powder was at Winter Park. The next was Vail. The route to Vail was through Loveland Pass, which I did at least once in a snowstorm. It was worth it. Vail was like dying and going to heaven on earth. I was hooked for life. I didn't own skis or boots or any of the right clothing at the time. I guess I wore blue jeans. Judy was home with David and Debbie and less than enthusiastic about my extended business trips, but I got away with it, at least for a while. So he became hooked, the family became hooked, and this was the next family, friends, colleagues activity. He skied for 45 years, which included family trips to Vail, Utah, and other spots. I have no words to describe what skiing with Marissa, Jordan, and Zach meant to him. Pretty often we would Linda had a minivan at a time, and Linda wasn't invited. It was me, Dad, and the 3 grandkids, and we'd go up to Blue Mountain for the day and pack and stuff like that. And I was just a driver at that point. You know, it was really him skiing with his grandkids. He and I started making regular trips to Blue Mountain in the 70s. Our last regular trip to Blue Mountain was when he was 79 years old. He and I went skiing. His goal, though, was to ski when he was at 80 years old. So his last ski trip was to Vail at age 80, which was full circle on skiing as an activity of life, with his ski buddy of 40 years, Stan. Stan, he missed you. Thanks for taking him on that trip. All right, let me see here. All right, let me switch gears a little bit. Let's talk Eagles. We're going to talk football. We're not going to talk the bird. He loved watching on TV, but the sound had to be off, unless John and Madden was announcing the game, and he would listen to Merle Reese and Mike Quick. Where's Bob? Bob, you took him to his first live football game. Thank you very much. His next highlight was going to football games with his grandsons. I'm going to digress here. The first football game I took him to was Jordan, and my father-in-law, Dad, was there. So this was way back in the day. This was at the Vet. This was Eagles versus Colts, probably Peyton Manning, year number 2, right? So for those who've been to an Eagles game, you know, as you get older, it's like, hey, when am I going to leave? The third quarter, the fourth quarter? Jordan looks at both his pop-ups. He's like, pop-ups? We can't leave. This is Peyton Manning we're watching here. So the 2 pop-ups look at each other. Guess we're not leaving. Welcome to grandfathership. Marissa, Jordan, Zach, and John, Marissa's husband, they're going to tomorrow night's game to honor and celebrate my dad. He'll be watching and smiling down at you guys. The other thing, family vacations were a constant. One particular trip to Disney World was memorable. It was us, Mom, Dad, and my in-laws, Mimi and Papa. My kids got to experience Disney World with their grandparents, but I'm pretty sure the grandparents had the better time. Of all the fun stuff we did there, the only story that still resonates from that trip is at 4 o'clock every day, like clockwork, my dad and my father-in-law had me back at the hotel for a cocktail hour. Dad, he loved going to lunch with you all the time. Make sure you go have that Johnny Walker Black tonight, will you? These are his words here. This is his words back in 2002. I've been able to do a lot. Ice skate, water ski, snow ski, scuba dive, never got me to do that one. Bungee jump, never got me to do that one. Riding a hot air balloon, we did do that one. Power sail, nope, didn't do that one. Flying a guider, didn't do that, didn't have a chance. And skydive, there's no way he was getting me to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. After I jumped out of an airplane in 2001, Lois, this is what you told my dad. I told Lois that was it. I complained my list of crazy stuff to do was over. And Lois said, no, you haven't. You just haven't identified the next thing yet. And that was probably my dad. So there's probably some other things he picked up along the way. After you guys bought the Shore House down in Market, you love running on the Ventnor Market boardwalk. At the end, it was kind of a slow shuffle. I don't think it was really the appeal of the running. What he really liked to do is count how many people were running by in their Central High shirts. That would give him a reason to pause, talk about Central High and stuff like that. Bristol My dad meant so much to me as a role model, husband, father, friend, confidant, and grandfather. Too much to talk about here. Many, many great memories, but here's what will stand out. He loved household projects, and every house in the Kaplan family reflects it. As the son of a mechanical and electric engineer, you'll learn a few things over life. I became fairly proficient with things electrical, which is pretty good news, no house has burned down yet. Every ceiling fan or other such project was he and I. A few weeks ago, this is probably in late July, August, I was installing 2 outdoor lights in Margate, and there was a wiring challenge. I sat down and contemplated how would Dad tackle this. I couldn't call him. Usually I would call him over the years, hey Dad, here's the situation, but I couldn't call him. The most memorable thing I remember, 25 years ago, Linda and I took over hosting Thanksgiving, which always included me and Papa. My dad was the official turkey carver. Along the way, he showed me how to carve, passing the torch for me to take over carving duties, with him watching. He'll be watching this year for sure. For everybody here, thanks for coming and listening to The Life of Don, a happy man.
As we begin to conclude our service, I would like to add this one poem, which I think is so appropriate for Don. And I'd like to read it almost as if he would be responding to the magnificent words of his children. Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I'm following the path God laid for me. I took God's hand when I heard God call. I turned my back and I left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work or play. Task left undone must stay that way. I found that place at the close of day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy. A friendship, share, a laugh, a kiss, ah yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your heart and share with me. God wanted me now. God set me free. Let's all rise. We conclude with our traditional El Mole Rachamim prayer, which includes Don's Hebrew name, which is David, which means beloved. El Mole Rachamim Shochem Bam Romim, Hamitzoi Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Lenishmat David Shehalach Le'olamo. Ba'al Harachamim Yitzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach V'shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar. Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of our beloved Don Papa, who has departed from this world. Lord, of mercy, bring him into your presence, and let his soul be bound up with the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may he rest in peace as he lived in peace with himself and with others. And we say, Amen. Amen. And you may be seated.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please.